Hey friends, welcome back to my sewing room. My name is Becca, and in today's video we are going to do a step-by-step tutorial to put this block together. This is part of my 2025 quilt along, which is totally free, and you can get the patterns on my website. The link is in the description box down below. Each pattern is going to give you the instructions to make that block in 4 different sizes: 3, 6, 9, or 12-inch finished. You decide what size you want to make. Maybe you want to make multiple of them. Put your block together, and then at the end of 2025, we're going to have a beautiful sampler quilt that we made together. All right, let's dive in first to showcasing the 12 fat quarters that Cotton Cut sent to me and see which fabrics I picked. But I guess you already know which ones I picked. Let's see what the other fat quarters were. This month I'm laying out my fat quarters like this so that you can see the print, because I've got some big prints and I really want you to see the fabric. So let's flip through these. We're going to start off with 4 fat quarters from the Color Crush line by Vanessa Christensen. And I got to tell you, I'm loving all 4 of these. I only need 3 fabrics for this month's block, so I'll have to pick only 3 of them, unless there's something else in here that I love, but I think these are going to be the winner. This is the 4th fat quarter in that line. Then I have 2 batiks, both in the purpley range. And then I've got some that I'm kind of meh on. I don't love this one, but of the rest of them here, it's probably the best. Not really a fan of this. Definitely not a fan of this. This one's called Pumpkin Spice by Primitive Gatherings. I don't hate it, but I'm not a big orange fan, so meh. And then I've got 2 of these kitty cat prints. They are festive. It is a holiday print, but I'm not. Oh, I guess there's, no, that's a cat dressed as a bunny rabbit. I was gonna say, oh, I guess there's a bunny rabbit, but no. Also, why is a cat dressed as a bunny rabbit for Christmas? Is this, I don't know. I don't know. It's cute. It's not me. But it does go with this print, which is cute, but is not me. Though I will say for this month's block, fussy cutting one of these cats to be the center of the block would be fun. I think I'm going to probably save this one and fussy cut it and put it on some hexies or in an EPP project though. So here are the 4 fat quarters that I have from the Color Crush line. I'm loving all of them, but I can only use 3. I know I want to use this as my background. Right away, I know that's the case. I also am thinking that I want to use this as my accent fabric and this as that center square on the block. So I think these are the 3 fat quarters that I'm going to work with. All of my pieces are cut out according to my pattern instructions, and I'm ready to get started. I illustrated the pattern visually, so there's not really any words to walk you through this. It's all pictorial, and then of course you'll have the video here to walk you through everything. Step 1 is going to be to assemble my unit A's, and that's going to be my fabric C and my fabric D. Now for me, I've got some directional fabric, and because I want to make sure that my directional fabric is going in the right direction, I'm just going to lay them out the way that they would be represented in the block. Now, this fabric is actually going to be on the outer edge of the block. So our fabric D, we're going to bring in and put towards the inside, just like this. All this is going to let me do is make sure that I am sewing the fabric so that it is oriented the right way. I'm going to take this all over to my machine and I'm going to sew all of this together with 1/4 inch. Now, of course, when you're orienting your fabric together, if you're working with fabric that's not directional, it doesn't really matter how this goes together as long as your fabrics are in the right place. Now, when I joined these together, I know that both of my fabrics are technically directional, but the one that I was really thinking about was the floral. I feel like the dots could look good either way. We're going to press all of our little units, these are unit A, towards fabric C. So I'm just going to finger press this, and then I'll take it over to my iron and give it a good hot press to make them lay really flat. When I press my fabric, by the way, all I'm doing is putting the iron on the seam and letting it sit there. I'm not moving it back and forth. If I do that, it could cause the fabric to warp a little bit, and I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to put it on the seam, and then if I need to move it, I'm going to lift it just ever so slightly off of the fabric so I'm not applying pressure while I'm moving the iron. These units were actually pretty easy, so we're going to set those aside, and now we're going to work on the corner units. We're going to make some square and a square blocks, and the way we're going to do that is take our square piece of fabric and some smaller squares. We're going to draw a line on the back side of the smaller squares, and we're going to put them onto these blocks using what I call the stitch and flip method. The stitch and flip method is going to require that you draw a line with your marking utensil from one corner to the other. And I like to do 2 corners on each block at a time because they're not going to touch each other. So we're going to do that one, and then we're going to do the opposite corner. Now you might be familiar with this technique when we make our half square triangle units. We draw that line and then we stitch a 1/4 inch on either side of that line. But this time we're going to stitch directly on that line. In fact, we might even stitch just 1 thread to the right of it. So let's take this to our machine and we'll stitch both of those on. Once our line is stitched on there, we're going to test to make sure that the square is laid where it's supposed to be and we stitched it appropriately. So I'm going to put my finger in between the 2 layers and I'm just going to gently push up against that seam and flip it over. What I should see is that my triangle now completes that corner exactly. If it's too shy on the front, that means we stitched too far to the left. We'll want to rip that out and try again. If it is bigger than the back, and this is what it would look like from the back side, that means we stitched too far to the right, and we don't need to rip that out, but we will need to try again. This looks pretty close for me, so I'm going to leave it. We'll test this other one. That looks pretty good as well. So I want to get those pieces to lay nice and flat and trim off the excess before I put on my other 2 corners. So since I know that they're laying where they need to be, now I'm going to come in and trim this away, leaving a 1/4 inch there. This is scrap. You can sew it and make a little half square triangle unit if you want to. Use it as a leader and ender or just toss it. It's your fabric, your rules. And then I'm going to take it over to my iron and press those triangles down nice and flat because we're going to stitch through them on the next step. Now we're going to repeat the same thing that we did before with the opposite 2 corners. So I'm going to take 2 more squares and my ruler. I'm going to draw a line from one corner to the other. Then I'm going to take this, line it up with the corner, and line it up with the other corner. Now I'm going to go to my sewing machine and stitch right next to that line just like I did before. Let's test that flip again. That looks good. And that looks good. We'll go ahead and trim this away. Cut it at about a 1/4 inch away from where you sewed. And you'll notice we're pressing those seams up underneath this fabric. I believe this is B. Now that we have our square and a square unit, this should square up to the same size as our fabric E. If it's a little bit bigger, you can go ahead and square it down. Just make sure that when you're doing that, these points around the edge of the block, these should be a 1/4 inch in from the edge of your block so that you don't lose your point when you sew this together. All right, I need to do that 3 more times, so I'm going to get sewing. Now that all of my units are put together, it is time to assemble our block. So we're going to start by taking our unit A's and laying them out in their corresponding position based on what we have in the diagram. We're always going to make sure that our fabric D is on the outside and our fabric C is on the inside. Then we're going to take those square and square units and put them in the 4 corners of the block. And we're going to finish by putting our fabric E right in the middle. And then we're just going to sew this together. For the top and the bottom row, we're going to press those seams in towards the middle. For the middle row, we're going to press out away from the middle, and that's going to allow us to nest our seams when we put the whole block together. So let's get started sewing. See, it's already starting to look like something better than what it was. It's time to put the rows together, and because we pressed our seams in opposite directions, that means that we're going to be able to nest our seams. That looks like this. On one row, you have a seam going to the right, and the one below it, the seam is going to the left. So we're just going to take those 2 seams and make them kiss. We're going to butt them right up next to each other. You can put a pin in that or use a clip if you'd like to. I usually just hold it with my finger. I take it over to the sewing machine, and with my finger or a stiletto or some other sharp object, I'm going to hold on to that seam while I sew a 1/4 inch all the way down, and then once that needle gets in that seam, I'll stop and make sure with my fingers I can feel that that next seam is nested nicely, and then we'll go all the way through. Just like that. Our top row is on. Now we're going to put our bottom row on. And that is what our finished block will look like. I gotta say, pretty happy with my fabric choices this month. Easy block to put together, but it looks a little bit more intricate, right? Which is great because summer is winding down. We have a little bit more time on our hands. Let me know in the comments down below if you are doing the sew along with me. And don't forget to take a photo of this month's block and upload it to social media, because at the end of every one of these videos, I'm showcasing 20 blocks that caught my eye from the previous month. Speaking of, let's roll that footage and see what you guys made last month.